Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you what it is in Revelation 11. We're going to talk today about the two witnesses that God is going to send during the tribulation period. Now, the tribulation period is not going to start until after the rapture. So what happens at the rapture is all the believers, the bride of Christ, are removed from the planet. And God is not going to allow the planet Earth to be without witnesses to Him. So He's going to send two witnesses, and there's been lots of discussion and controversy as to who these two witnesses are. And I'm going to give you my opinion, which I believe is right. And you can decide for yourself. So let's get started. Revelation 11, verse 1. Then there was given me a measuring rod like a staff, and someone said, "Get up and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and those who worship in it." Okay, so we've got instructions to measure a temple. The problem is, in the Bible, there are 4 temples alluded to. So which temple is are they being told to measure? Well, let's review the 4. The first one, of course, is Solomon's temple. This is the one David wanted to build, but he couldn't because he had blood on his hands. He had killed somebody. So his son, Shlomo, Solomon, was given the instructions, and Solomon built the first temple. You can find this in 1 Chronicles 6:14. And this temple, by the way, was absolutely beautiful, filled with gold and treasures and just magnificent. And the Jews, unfortunately, showed this off to the Babylonians when they came, and then the Babylonians came back and invaded it and destroyed it and took the Jews captive for 70 years. So that's the first temple. The second temple was built by Zerubbabel. He was one of the Jews who was taken, and he was allowed to come back to Jerusalem. And when he came back, he and Joshua, the high priest, Zerubbabel was the governor. Zerubbabel was instructed to build this second temple. And years later, Herod, the king, he added to that second temple. This is the temple that Jesus went into. He turned over the money changers, and this temple was not nearly as impressive as the first one. And you can find this temple reference in Zechariah 4, verse 9. And just to give you an idea of the two temples and their looks, let's go back to the book of Haggai, chapter 2, the first 3 verses. It says, "On the 21st day of the 7th month, the word of the Lord came through Haggai the prophet, saying, Speak to Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and also to the remnant of the people. Ask them, who is left among you who saw this house in its former glory? How does it look to you now? Does it not appear to you like nothing in comparison?" So they are instructed to ask the people, who remembers 70 years ago that first temple that was here and how magnificent it was? And then look at this new temple that it's not even close in comparison, right? But, I don't know if you've ever been to the Kotel, the Western Wall. This is where the Jews go and pray. A lot of Christians mistakenly refer to this as the Wailing Wall. They're not wailing when they're praying, okay? So don't call it the Wailing Wall. It's the Western Wall. And above it is the Temple Mount, and that's where the temple sat. But if you go to the Temple Mount, or the Kotel, the lower part there, they have a sign that says, the latter glory of this house will be greater than the former. Okay, well, what is that talking about? Well, it is also quoting Haggai chapter 2 verse 9, where it says, the glory of this latter temple will be greater than the former, says the Lord of hosts. And in this place I will give peace, says the Lord of hosts. Okay, so if the second temple, which Zerubbabel is building, if it's not as great as the first temple, why is its glory going to be greater than the first temple? And the reason is, the second temple was visited by God, Yeshua HaMashiach. That's why its glory is greater. The third temple referenced in the Bible is in Matthew 24:15. This is the tribulation temple, because the second temple got destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. Okay? Yet Yeshua is talking about that, well, we'll just read it here. In Matthew 24:15, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. So we could go on, but you got the point. There's going to be a holy place, which means there's going to be a temple, and the abomination of desolation is when Antichrist enters that temple and declares himself to be God. Huge, huge, huge. Okay? And that has not happened. So it didn't happen in the second temple, so it must going to be happening in the third temple, which the Jews right now do not have a temple up there. The Muslims control it. They have some buildings up there, and the Jews, a few go up there, but not many, and you're not allowed to pray up there. The Muslims go crazy if you make any kind of religious acts up there. And here in 2 Thessalonians 2, 3 and 4, it says, let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. So here, Paul is referring to a third temple and an antichrist who's going to enter it and claim to be God. So a third temple is coming. Okay? In fact, if you've been to Jerusalem and go to the Temple Mount Institute, they have all the priestly garments made already. They have all the utensils used for temple worship. They're on display there. The only thing they need now is the go-ahead to start building up on top. And there is going to be a fourth temple. And Ezekiel 37:26 refers to that. We will talk about that later in the video. This is the one that Yeshua Jesus is going to build. This is the millennial temple. So those are the four temples. Which one is our passage today instructing to have measured? I believe it is the third temple. Okay, it's letting us know that. Let's go on to Revelation 11:2. The instructions continue. Leave out the court which is outside the temple, and do not measure it. For it has been given to the nations, and they will tread underfoot the holy city for 42 months. Okay, so here is a picture. I'm standing here on top of the Mount of Olives. You can look down and see the Temple Mount. Here's a close-up view of it. This is the Temple Mount area. I think it's about 35 acres up there. And the significant buildings, there is the Al-Aqsa Mosque on one end. There is the Dome of the Rock. You often see that, the gold-domed building. These were built around 600 AD, late 500s and AD. And there is the Holy Temple, which is not there, but this, I believe, is roughly where it would be positioned up there. So it could be rebuilt now without touching the other two buildings. Okay? And the reason I choose this area is it is in line with the beautiful gate, the Eastern Gate. Okay? It's the double gates that are walled shut. It's prophesied that the Messiah, when he does return, he will come through the Eastern Gate. So the Muslims have walled up the Eastern Gate, double thick with giant blocks, so that no Messiah will be able to get through there, although Yeshua will. Verse 2, and it says, as we said, they will tread underfoot the holy city for 42 months. Okay, 42 months is 3.5 years, right? 3 12 is 36, and 6 more months, 42. We read that number 42 months in Revelation 11:2, and it also shows up in Revelation 13:5. There was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given to him. So there's that 42 months again. Revelation 11:3. And I will grant authority to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. Okay, 1,260 days. You know what? 1,260 days is 3.5 years, which is the same as 42 months. We see it in Revelation 11:3 and in 12:6. 12:6 says, Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God, so that there she would be nourished for 1,260 days. Interesting that those time periods are the same. And that's not the only place it shows up this amount of time. Look in Daniel 7, starting in verse 23. This is what he said. The fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which will be different from all the other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth and trample it down and crush it. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones, and will humble 3 kings. And he will speak against the Most High, and wear down the saints of the Highest One, and he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be handed over to him for a time, times, and half a time. But the court will convene for judgment, and his dominion will be taken away, annihilated, and destroyed forever. So here Daniel, way back in the Old Testament, he's prophesying that the holy city, the temple is going to be taken over by this fourth beast, okay? And it'll be handed over to him for a time. A time is a year. Times is 2 years and a half a time. So we've got 3.5 years again. Shows up in Daniel 7:25, 12:7, and in Revelation 12:14. Look at 12:14. The woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time, times, and a half a time from the presence of the serpent. So we have all these different ways of saying 3.5 years. I'm surprised he didn't give it to us in nanoseconds. Again in verse 3, I will grant authority to my 2 witnesses. Remember, God is not going to leave the planet Earth without witnesses of him. And he's going to have 2 of them there. That Hebrew, or it's not Hebrew, this is Greek in the New Testament. The word witnesses is martysin, that's the plural. That's the word for witness. Singular is martus, and I may not be pronouncing it correctly. I'm not worried about that. That's the word for witness. And this Greek word martus, this is where we get the word martyr. Okay? You see and witness something and you believe it's so strong that you're willing to die for that. That's interesting that's where that word comes from. Very cool. And we know that there has to be at least 2 witnesses. He's not sending 1, because Deuteronomy 17:6 says, on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, a man shall be put to death. But he shall not be executed on the testimony of a lone witness. God requires 2 witnesses. Deuteronomy 19:15, a lone witness is not sufficient to establish any wrongdoing or sin against a man, regardless of what offense he may have committed. A matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. And in John 8:17, in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, it is also written in your law that the testimony of 2 men is true. So, what are these 2 witnesses going to do? Well, they are going to be there accusing Israel of their apostasy, of turning away from their God-given religion. Okay? And the imagery of this, having 2 witnesses there professing God and Yeshua, you can go back to Zechariah 4, and he gives an image of these 2 lampstands, okay, or 2 olive trees, 2 olive trees that stand next to, on the right and the left of the lampstand. Okay, and these 2 are anointed to serve the Lord of all the earth. Okay, and in Zechariah it identifies them as Zerubbabel, the governor of Judah, and Joshua, the high priest. Okay, so we know who they are back in the Old Testament, but there is a prophetic parallel that there's going to be 2 witnesses then, and there's going to be 2 witnesses in the future. And the 2 witnesses in the future, that's what we're going to discuss today, who they are. So, these 2 witnesses, they are going to have certain powers, okay? They will be able to devour their enemies when fire comes out of their mouth, okay? And anybody who's heckling them gets burned up. And God will give these 2 witnesses this power, first to authenticate their ministry, okay, and to show that they are supernaturally empowered messengers sent by God. They're not just 2 crazy men ranting in the streets, okay. They got the motts behind them. And where in Jerusalem will they be doing this? I believe it will be on the Temple Mount, which is kind of ironic because, as I said earlier, the Muslims control the Temple Mount right now, and you're not allowed to go up there and quietly pray. If they see your lips moving without stuff coming out, all hell breaks loose. You know, they want you arrested, they want you thrown off the Temple Mount. I mean, this is the place where God said, here, I want my house built. And we're not allowed to go up there and pray today. Good luck stopping us, right? I mean, if you pray internally. But the sad thing is they're watching you to see if you are doing that. And so you can imagine if 2 human beings go up there and they are preaching Yeshua and the blood of Yeshua and salvation and the God of Israel, Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Antichrist will go crazy. Okay? And he will want them stopped. But anyone who tries to stop them, fire comes out of the witnesses' mouths and devour them. All right. So, now let's get started. Who are the possible identities of the 2 witnesses? Well, a lot of people say Enoch would be one of them, and we'll discuss each of these in detail. Others say Elijah will be one of them. Some say Moses will be one of them. And some say just maybe 2 complete strangers that we don't know, to whom we have not been introduced yet. Okay? So let's start with 2 strangers. You know, throughout the Bible, here, Matthew 10:26, so do not fear them, for there is nothing concealed that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. Mark 4:22, nothing is hidden except to be revealed. Nothing has been secret, but that it should come to light. Luke 8:27, there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be made known and brought to light. You know, the Bible, God says he's revealing everything to us. Or Jesus told us, you know, you're my friends. Friends tell each other things. So what was revealed to Jesus, Jesus reveals to us. So I believe that the true identity of the two witnesses, it's in the Bible. We just got to read our Bible and know it and learn it and live it. And it will be revealed to us. So the two strangers, as you will see, there are just too many clues to be two strangers. Okay? So it's not two strangers. Revelation 4-6. Let's read on. It says, these are the two olive trees and the two lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. And if anyone wants to harm them, fire flows out of their mouth and devours their enemies. So if anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this way. Now, will actual literal fire come out of their mouth like a fire-breathing dragon? I believe yes. But there are some who will claim, like look in Jeremiah 5:14. It says, therefore this is what the Lord God of hosts says, because you have spoken this word, I will make my words a fire in your mouth, and this people the wood it consumes. So here it's kind of a figurative thing where just the word of God itself is like a fire that will just consume anybody who hears it. That is a true statement, but I don't think that's the statement that's happening here in Revelation. I think true fire will come out and consume them, burn them up. Okay? Verse 6. These have the power to shut up the sky so that rain will not fall during the days of their prophesying. And they will have power over the waters to turn them into blood, and to strike the earth with every plague as often as they desire. Verse 7, when they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up out of the abyss will make war with them and overcome them and kill them. And their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which mystically is called Sodom and Egypt. Where also their Lord was crucified. Okay, I was wondering, what great city will their dead bodies lie that is mystically called Sodom and Egypt? If you just read that much, I don't get it. But when it says where their Lord was crucified, now I know we're talking about Jerusalem. Which then begs the question, why is it mystically called Sodom and mystically called Egypt? Well, you know, at the time when this happens, the rapture has taken place. The Holy Spirit has been removed. It is now a free-for-all on the planet. Lawlessness abides. Okay, so it is a hell on earth kind of situation. So Sodom epitomizes human wickedness and heavenly wrath. You remember the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? They were wicked and they got destroyed. And so that's a picture of the wickedness that's going to be taking place in Jerusalem. And Egypt, it symbolizes slavery, from which only the blood of Jesus Christ can free you. And during that time, people aren't going to be believing in Yeshua HaMashiach, and the blood to cover your sins. So people will be in spiritual slavery. Okay? So that's why it's called Sodom and Egypt. Verse 9. Those from the peoples and tribes and tongues and nations will look at their dead bodies for 3.5 days and will not permit their dead bodies to be laid in a tomb. Wow. You know, this is 2,000 years ago written. And it says that people from all the peoples and tribes and tongues and nations will be able to look upon their dead bodies for 3.5 days. That sounds like crazy talk 2,000 years ago. Today, yeah, we could all watch it on our cell phones. And verse 10, and those who dwell on the earth will rejoice over them and celebrate, and they will send gifts to one another, because these two prophets tormented those who dwell on the earth. Remember, fire comes out of their mouth. They're turning water to blood. They're stopping the rain. These are pretty big plagues that are affecting the planet. And when these two guys are killed finally, and their bodies are laying on the street for 3.5 days, people are rejoicing. Oh, they're gone, thank goodness. And they're giving gifts to one another. Verse 11, but after 3.5 days, the breath of life from God came into them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell upon those who were watching them. And they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, come up here. Then they went up into heaven in a cloud, and their enemies watched them. And in that hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. 7,000 people were killed in the earthquake, and the rest were terrified and gave glory to God in heaven. The second woe is past. Behold, the third woe is coming quickly. Okay, so who are these two witnesses that God is going to send? The short list here is Enoch, Elijah, and Moses. Let's start with Elijah. He is the number one candidate, and let me show you why. The Old Testament, Malachi is the last book. Chapter 4 is the last chapter, and verses 5 and 6 are the last two verses of the Tanakh, of the Old Testament. And it says, behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. And he will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the hearts of the children to the fathers. Otherwise I will come and strike the land with a curse. So here, he's telling us that he's going to send Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. What is the great and awesome day of the Lord? That is the tribulation period, okay? And the final return of Christ at the end of the tribulation period. In the New Testament, in the Gospels, Jesus does say, John the Baptist was Elijah, if you can just see it. Elijah's coming kind of twice. He's coming spiritually as John the Baptist. But that was not the coming before the great and awesome day of the Lord. So he's coming spiritually as a John the Baptist character, but he's going to come back physically at the tribulation. So I think that's a huge point why Elijah is one of them. Some people claim this in 2 Kings 2:11. As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire with horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up into heaven in a whirlwind. This is when Elijah and Elisha were walking along, and Elijah was about to go up to heaven. We have a good video on Elijah, Elisha. Watch that. But here, Elijah never died, right? He was taken up in a whirlwind. And a lot of people claim, Hebrews 9:27, it is appointed for man once to die, but after this the judgment. And because Elijah never died, he must die. And so he will come back as one of the witnesses and preach, and then he will be killed and lay in the street for 3.5 days. And so then that verse is fulfilled. He finally died. Okay? I don't hold a lot on that piece of evidence as much as the first one we showed, okay? I do like this one though. Look in 1 Kings 17:1. This is when we're introduced to Elijah. Now Elijah the Tishbite, who was among the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab, "As surely as the Lord lives, the God of Israel, before whom I stand, there will be neither dew nor rain in these years except at my word." And what is one of the big tricks of these witnesses, or the tricks, powers? Revelation 11:6 says, "These have the powers to shut up the sky so that rain will not fall during the days of their prophesying." So that, I think, has a lot more weight than the "he never died" argument. Elijah's big thing was he stopped the rain for 3 years. And here in Revelation, they will have the power to stop the rain. Okay? 1 Kings 18:1, it says, "And it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go present yourselves to Ahab, and I will send rain in the earth." So we see here that Elijah did stop the rain for at least 3 years and less than 4 because it's in the 3rd year. So I'm looking at this as that when Elijah did it the first time, it was for 3.5 years. We don't know it's a half, but it's not just 3 because it's in the 3rd year. So when in the 3rd year? My guess is in the middle, so that it then now ties in with the witnesses in Revelation 11. And 3.5 years, again, ties in with 1,260 days, 42 months, time, and half a time. Okay, it also ties in with Daniel's half of the 70th Shabuah from Daniel 9. Okay, verse 5 of Revelation 11. "And if anyone wants to harm them, fire flows out of their mouth and devours their enemies. So if anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this way." Okay, so we've got fire coming out of their mouth. Elijah is tied in with that too. Look in 2 Kings 1, starting in verse 9. This is, by the way, the king, Ahaziah, I think, he was up on a 2nd floor and he fell through some lattice and landed down below, and it caused him great problems, and he wanted to know if he was going to die, and he inquired of these false gods, and so then he thought, you know what, I want to inquire to Elijah and find out if I'm going to live or die. So he sent, this is where we're picking up here in verse 9, "Then the king sent to Elijah," him, "a captain of 50 with his 50, and he went up to him, and behold, he was sitting on the top of a hill. And he said to him, 'O man of God, the king says, come down.' And Elijah replied to the captain of 50, 'If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. Then fire came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. All right. And then, a verse later, the king sent another captain of 50 with his 50. And he said, "O man of God, thus says the king, come down quickly." And Elijah replied to them, "If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. Then the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. Now, by the way, these are Elijah's 6th and 7th miracles. Elijah did 8 in total. And look at some of the miracles Elijah did. He shut heaven and stopped the rain for 3 years. He brought fire down on 51 soldiers twice. He also, if you remember, he brought fire from heaven on the soaked altar, okay, in 1 Kings 18. So there is fire associated with Elijah and stopping rain. And the Old Testament ends with, I'm going to send Elijah. So I think it's hands down Elijah is one of the witnesses. By the way, wait! We have a mini bonus. Didn't see that coming, did you? Okay, the mini bonus is this. I'm not going to read it again, but we had him send the first 50 and his 50. And then he had sent another 50, captain of 50 with his 50. And then he sent a third. Let's read the third one here. We didn't read this one earlier. 2 Kings 1:13. So again, he sent the captain of a third 50 with his 50. When the third captain of 50 went up, he came and bowed down on his knees before Elijah and begged him and said to him, O man of God, please let my life and the lives of these 50 servants of yours be precious in your sight. Behold, fire came down from heaven and consumed the first 2 captains of 50 and their 50s. But now let my life be precious in your sight. And the angel of the Lord said to Elijah, Go down with him, and do not be afraid of him. So he arose and went down with him to the king. Notice how many people total in this story. The first 50 with his, first captain with his 50, second captain with his 50, and then you have a third captain with his 50. You got a total of 153. That should ring a bell because that goes to John 21, the number of fish caught. Okay, there's a tie-in. I think it's the only other time 153 shows up so blatantly in the Bible. All right. Now, look at Zechariah 13, because there's a prophetic level to that story. Zechariah 13, verse 7 and 8 says, Awake, sword, against my shepherd, and against the man, my associate, declares the Lord of the armies. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered, and I will turn my hand against the little ones. And it will come about in all the land, declares the Lord, that 2 parts in it will be cut off and perish, but 1/3 will be left in it. All right, you see how look at this. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. That definitely did happen. Yeshua, Jesus, he is the good shepherd, and they struck him, they crucified him, nailed him to a tree. And what happened soon after? The Jews were scattered. The Romans scattered them all over the world. So that part absolutely came true. And it will come about in all the land. 2 parts in it will be cut off and 1/3 will be left. Remember, the land, whenever it mentions the land, that's Israel. When it mentions the seas, that's the nations. So in the land, it says 2 parts, that's 2/3, will be cut off. And 1/3 will be left in it. Well, look, we're talking about Israel. It was the king of Israel who sent his captain in his 50s to go get Elijah. Okay, so we have 2 captains and their 50s, so 2 groups got cut off and perished. Fire came down and consumed them. And 1 captain of 50 with his 50 were left because they came on their knees begging for mercy. So that is a pretty picture, well, maybe not pretty, but that's a picture of what's coming. And that has not happened yet. There's never been a time in Israel's modern history where 2/3 of all the people in Israel have been wiped out. Just hasn't happened. The Holocaust was a horrible, horrible thing, but at the time, I think there were about 18 million Jews on the planet, and about 6 million were killed by Hitler in the Holocaust. So the Holocaust was not a fulfillment of this prophecy. This is something that is still to be in the future. And I think that this thing with the 50 and the captains, that's a picture of that. The 2/3 got cut off and 1/3 left in it. Okay. Identities of the 2 witnesses. We mentioned Enoch as possibly one, and Elijah, I think, is a good one. Enoch, by the way, Enoch was not Jewish. You know, you're not a Jew unless you're a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Judah. That's where the word Jewish comes from, if you're a descendant of Judah, right? Or Jacob, or You might even claim, no, I don't think Abraham, because Abraham had other sons who didn't turn out to be Jewish. You pretty much got to be a descendant of Jacob, I'm thinking. Okay, Judah for sure. Enoch, who's Enoch? He was way back in creation. He was the seventh in line created. Adam was first, right? Then Seth and Enosh. You can go through. Number 7 is Enoch. He's a Gentile. Elijah is definitely Jewish. So some claim, well, these two witnesses would have to be Enoch and Elijah because they are witnessing to both Jew and Gentile, right? So he sends a Jewish witness, Elijah, and a Gentile witness, Enoch. Witnesses to everybody. So that's one point why it could be Enoch. Genesis 7:4 says Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more because God had taken him away. Remember, Enoch never died. They went on a walk, and just God, I don't know, hey, Enoch, we're closer to my house than yours. Let's not go back. Come on to my house. So that could be it. And those two both never died, Enoch and Elijah. And again, Hebrews 9:27, it is appointed for men once to die, but after this the judgment. So some claim that those two. I'm going to put Enoch in a questionable thing. He's got a couple points toward being one of the witnesses, but I'm not 100% sold on him yet. Elijah, I'm good with him. And let's look at why I don't like Enoch. You know, what job do the two witnesses have? Let's look at some of their job description. They're going to proclaim in Jerusalem. Okay? Well, Jerusalem is not a Gentile city, it's a Jewish city, so you wouldn't expect if they're, I don't know, witnessing to the whole world, why pick Jerusalem? That seems like a Jewish spot. They are likened to olive trees. Olive tree represents Israel. So that's another Jewish tie-in, which Enoch would not have. And when are they doing this? During the tribulation period. And what is the tribulation period? Another name for it is the time of Jacob's trouble. Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These are Jews, right? This is where the time of the Gentiles are over. Look how the big picture was. God sent the Messiah to the Jews. The Jews rejected their Messiah. The Jews get scattered all over the world, and God now turns his focus to the Gentiles and offers the gift of salvation to all the world. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. John 3:16. So he turns his focus on all the Gentiles, but then when the time of the Gentiles is over, the believing Gentiles are raptured away, and now he's focused back on the Jews. It's the time of Jacob's trouble. He is going to get the Jews' attention so that they will finally recognize Yeshua Jesus as their Mashiach. So, because this tribulation period is not the time of the Gentiles, I am going to eliminate Enoch. Okay? And here's another nice reason for that. We're going to go back to Noah's flood. You know, there were 4 groups connected to Noah's flood. The first group is those who died in the flood. Genesis 7:23, and every living thing on the face of the earth was destroyed. Man and livestock, crawling creatures and birds of the air, they were blotted out from the earth. That makes sense. A lot of people died during the flood. Okay, that's one group. Another group, those who lived through the flood. And this is a continuation of 7:23. And only Noah and those with him in the ark remained. That would be Noah, his wife, 3 sons, 3 daughters, 8 in total. Remember, 8 in Hebrew represents new beginnings. And this this is a new beginning, right? The whole planet gets flooded and we're starting anew with 8 people. So those who lived through the flood. Okay, so that's 2 groups connected to the flood. Who's the third group? Those who died prior to the flood. Genesis 5:27. So Methuselah lived a total of 969 years, and then he died. Okay, if you do the math, and the Bible gives the genealogies of all these people, you can calculate Methuselah died the year the flood began. I believe he died 7 days before the flood began. I watched my Noah video and it'll explain it. But that is died prior to the flood, which is different than dying in it or living through it, right? All right. So who's the fourth group associated with Noah's flood? Those who were raptured prior to the flood. And here, look at Genesis 5:24. It says, Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more, because God had taken him away. Enoch didn't die in the flood. He didn't live through the flood. He didn't die prior to the flood. He was raptured prior to the flood. Okay? So those are your 4 groups. Now, let's look at those same 4 groups connected to the tribulation period. You have those who die in the tribulation period, Revelation 6:8. And they were given authority over 1/4 of the earth to kill by sword, by famine, by plague, and by the beasts of the earth. You have those who live through the tribulation. Revelation 7:3, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the seed nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their forehead. Remember, the 144,000 get sealed in their forehead, and they will live through the tribulation. Those who die prior to the tribulation. 1 Thessalonians 4:14. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, we also believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. Nice. And then the 4th group is those who are raptured prior to the tribulation. 1 Thessalonians 4:17. After that, we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will always be with the Lord. Beautiful. So, I think that Noah picture is, a worldwide flood. That's tribulation. And now we're having another tribulation. The first one with Noah was destroyed by water. In the second tribulation, it's going to be destroyed by fire. Okay? And we have 4 groups. Those who die in it, those who live through it, those who died prior to it, and those who are raptured prior to it. And I believe Enoch was a picture, a type, a prophetic picture of those who are raptured prior to the tribulation. Okay? And when it does say that it is appointed for man once to die, but there are some people in the Bible who died twice. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people who have died twice. Right? Lazarus was one of them. Here are all of them listed. You can search them up. We had 2 who never died. Enoch, I don't see him coming back and dying. Elijah is going to come back. Yeah. All right. And there are others who will never die. The raptured bride, 1 Thessalonians 4:17, we just read it. After that, those who are alive and remain will be caught up together with him in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will always be with the Lord. Right? Those who are raptured are not appointed once to die. So, do what you want with that. Here is Enoch. It shows you the Genesis 5:21. Enoch lived 65 years and fathered Methuselah. Then Enoch walked with God 300 years after he fathered Methuselah, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. And First Chronicles gives you the genealogy, and it shows you Enoch is number 7. There, okay? And Enoch he gets a mention in the New Testament also. By faith, Enoch was taken away, so he did not see death, and was not found because God had taken him. For before he was taken, he had this testimony that he pleased God. So he pleased God. God rewards him by taking him. God's going to send him back and kill him. Doesn't seem like a nice gift, if that's how that works. And Jude has an odd mention of Enoch, because there's not much listed about Enoch. We've kind of read it all. In Jude 1:14 it says, Now Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about these men also, saying, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment on all, to convict all who are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds, which they have committed in an ungodly way, and all of the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. I don't know where, it's not in the Bible anywhere that Enoch said, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints, except in Jude. So I don't know how Jude knew that he said that, but that's pretty much all we got about Enoch. So Enoch types the church. We will be raptured, and we will not die. So I'm eliminating Enoch as a possibility. The other one we had was Moshe. Okay, let's see what he has here. Revelation 11:6, remember, said, These have the power to shut up the sky so that rain will not fall during the days of their prophesying. And they have the power over the waters to turn them into blood, and to strike the earth with every plague as often as they desire. Okay, who turned water to blood? Well, Exodus 7:20. So Moses and Aaron did even as the Lord had commanded, and he lifted up his staff and struck the water that was in the Nile, in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, and all the water that was in the Nile was turned to blood. So Moses, that's a big miracle Moses did, and that's a big miracle that one of the two witnesses are going to have, turning water into blood. That just kind of screams Moses to me. Okay? And it also says, and to strike the earth with every plague as often as they desire. Moses sent 10 plagues. Or, I don't know if God sent them, Moses delivered them, or whatever. Moses announced them. Okay? So, having the power to turn water to blood, stopping the rain, those two things, stopping the rain is Elijah, water to blood is Moses. That just kind of screams Moses and Elijah. Okay? And remember, Deuteronomy 18:18 says, I will raise up a prophet from among their countrymen like you. This is God talking to Moses. I will raise up a prophet from among their countrymen like you, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. So, this is a messianic prophecy. This is letting the people, the Jews, my Jewish friends, listen. If you want to know who is the Messiah, he's the one who's going to be Jewish, because he's from among your countrymen, and he's going to be a prophet. He's going to be most like Moses, like Moshe. And I'm telling you, we've got a 5-part video series on Moses. Everything that Moses did, Yeshua did. Yeshua, Jesus, is the prophet who is most like Moshe. We go through event after event after event. If Moses stands, Jesus stands. If Moses sits, Jesus sits. If Moses sings, Jesus sang. It goes on and on and on, and it makes a point to point out the exact parallels of these two. So it wouldn't be surprising if Moses, I mean, look, he's putting his words in Moses' mouth, okay, and or he's putting his words in the prophet's mouth, would be Jesus, okay, but it's Moses. Moses fits this. All right. Look at the next to the penultimate, the next to last verse of the Tanakh. We already read Malachi 4, 5, and 6. I will send Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. What is the verse that precedes that? Look at Malachi 4:4. Remember the law of my servant Moses, the statutes and ordinances I commanded him for all Israel at Horeb. Horeb is Sinai. The mountain has two different names. So, the penultimate verse of the Tanakh mentions Moses. The penultimate verse mentions Elijah. So the Old Testament ends with Moses and Elijah. So, that's another nice piece of evidence that those will be the two witnesses. The Tanakh ends with Moses and Elijah. Look in the New Testament, John 1:45. It says, Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses wrote in the law, and the prophets also wrote, Yeshua, the son of Joseph from Nazareth." And we see again in Acts 24:14, "But this I confess to you, that according to the way," which they call a sect, "so I worship the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets." So notice, both of these verses refer to the law and the prophets as proof that Yeshua Jesus is the way, is the Messiah. And who represents the law? That's Moses. He came down the mountain with the law. And who's the greatest prophet? Elijah. So, if you're using the law and the prophets to prove who the Messiah is, that's Moses and Elijah. That's it. So, another nice picture there. And by the way, you see where it says in Acts 24 that according to the way, which they call a sect, the way. You know, people always ask me, "What religion are you, John?" And I've attended Independent Fundamental Church. I've attended a Presbyterian church briefly. I've attended a Baptist church. I've attended a lot of different churches. I don't claim any of them. I am a follower of the way. And I hope you are as well. That's what we should be calling. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." When God put Adam and Eve out of the garden, he put cherubim with flaming swords to guard the way to the tree of life. Old Testament, prepare ye the way of the Lord. And that's what these people were called, followers of the way in the New Testament. So, that's it. There's no denomination that I'm associated with. I'm washing my hands of them all. I'm a follower of the way. How pilot of me. Okay. Look at Exodus 3:13. This one's huge, huge. This is when Moses goes up to the burning bush. And God tells him, "Take off your shoes. I've seen your plight," and on and on. And then Moses says something to God. He says, then Moses asked God in Exodus 3:13, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' What should I tell them?" And God said to Moses, "Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" By the way, beautiful name, I am. Ask him yesterday, his name is I am. Ask him tomorrow, I am. Ask him today, he is always. Okay, beautiful answer. Now, the interesting thing is, when Moses went down off the mountain, the people never asked him, oh, you talked to God? What was his name? And you can read the entire Torah, and the Jews never asked Moses, what was his name? Interesting. So, is that just some throwaway line in the Bible that was put in there? That Moses said, oh, by the way, God, well, if they ask me, what is your name? What do I tell them? There's never a throwaway line in the Bible. Every letter is there for a reason. And I think the reason is because they never asked him back then, they're going to ask him in the future. And that would be a legitimate question that a Jew would ask these two witnesses who were on the Temple Mount during Revelation 11, tribulation period. You two are witnesses representing God? Oh, what was his name? What is his name? See, they're going to ask, what is his name? They just didn't do it when Moses was here the first time. They will do it when he comes back as a witness. How cool is that? And on to verse 3:15 in Exodus, God also told Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is how I am to be remembered in every generation. By the way, the Lord, whenever you see the Lord, in Hebrew it's Yahweh or Jehovah, however you want to pronounce it. Just let me show you the difference here. We've talked about this in previous videos, but when Moses asked, what is your name? God answered, Ehyah, I am. But we are not to call him that. He goes on in 3:15 to say, you tell them Yahweh sent me, or sent you, okay? The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yahweh means in Hebrew, he is. He doesn't want us answering, hey John, who is your God? Oh, I am. No. God, only God can answer, Ehyah, I am. We are to call him, he is. Yahweh. Got it? And it's still present tense no matter when you ask him. Okay? And in the Bible, often in the translations, they put it as L-O-R-D in all caps. Okay? That is Yahweh. His name that we are to call him. Okay? It has a name, the Tetragrammaton. Okay? Here it is even in the ancient Hebrew script. All right? And I'm going to give you one last piece of evidence. This is from Jude 9. And there's only one chapter, so it's verse 9. It says, but even the archangel Michael, when he disputed with the devil over the body of Moshe, did not presume to bring a slanderous charge against him, but said, the Lord rebuke you. Okay, I always wondered, why, when Moses died, why was Satan arguing to somehow get the body of Moses? He didn't get it, but what's the point of that? I believe because Satan knows that Moses is going to come back as one of the two witnesses. Satan knows the Bible. He knows it inside and out. And he thinks, you know what? If I have the body of Moses, Moses can't come back. Could be. You know, that's another nice piece of evidence. The thing I think Satan doesn't realize is whenever we die, our body is just an empty shell. you know, throw me in the woods. I don't care what happens to my body. You know, we are given new bodies, and Moses would have gotten a new body to come back. The problem with that is our new body is going to be incorruptible. So I don't know how if Moses comes back with a new heavenly body, how can he die and lay in the streets for 3.5 days? There's that problem, but that's not my problem right now. Okay. So I believe that the two witnesses are going to be Elijah and Moses. I don't think this is an issue that Christians should be dogmatic about. This is not, your salvation doesn't hinge on this, but it is a nice thing to consider. So there you got it. Okay. To God be the honor. To God be the glory. To God be the praise. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Wait! We have a bonus. Now, this bonus is not going to be super biblical, but there is a nice tie-in to it, and I will show you that here. Let's look at Revelation 11, starting in verse 7. Remember, when they finish their testimony, the beast that comes up out of the abyss will make war with them and overcome them, and their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which mystically is called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. Verse 9, those from the peoples and tribes and tongues and nations will look at their dead bodies for 3.5 days and will not permit their dead bodies to be laid in a tomb. And those who dwell on earth will rejoice over them and celebrate, and they will send gifts to one another, because these two prophets tormented those who dwell on the earth. Okay, that verse 9, peoples from tribes and tongues and nations will look on their dead bodies for 3.5 days. So verse 9, we read this earlier, and we asked, how was it 2,000 years ago that John could say that everyone on the planet will be watching these two witnesses' dead body lie in the streets for 3.5 days? It was technologically impossible. But that's what he prophesied. So, I don't know if you guys know this, but one of my goals in life is to visit every country on the planet. And back in 2005, I think it was Iberia Airline, had a special from Madrid to Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. $300 return. So I booked it, flew to Madrid, flew down to Malabo. Now, Equatorial Guinea, you can't even see it on the map here. So let's zoom in. And you will see here, it's right there, it's a little island, and it's in the armpit there of Africa. And this little island is surrounded by oil. And so it is an extremely wealthy country as for the oil money that comes in, but the people are absolutely dirt poor. They got a corrupt administration who just takes all the money and probably puts it in Swiss bank accounts. Okay, so when I get to Malabo, it's very expensive because they're catering to oil men, and oil men have money. And just the hotel was horrible, but very expensive. So I wanted to hightail it out of there as soon as I could. I scratched it off, I was there. And so I flew, and by the way, Equatorial Guinea has two parts. It's this little island, and there's a mainland part that sits down between Cameroon and Gabon. So I flew down to Equatorial Guinea mainland. I think I spent a night there, and then hitchhiked / I think I paid a pickup truck to drive me down to Libreville. So I went down to the border of the two countries. You had to cross a river whenever the boat was available. And it was interesting. When I entered Gabon, I had a visa, and I got another, it was a taxi, I think it was a car, and it was stuffed with people. And maybe 10 miles inland, in the pure jungles, they had a guard. He was sitting on a chair, he had an umbrella, and he stopped every car. We were the only one at the time, but he would stop us, and he wanted to see all of our papers. Well, I had all my papers. I had my vaccinations, here's my passport, here's my visa, and he kind of held us hostage. He wanted to see my meningitis vaccination, and I showed him all the documents that I don't need a meningitis vaccination. And after probably 40 minutes of arguing with him, he knew I wasn't going to relent. In fact, I went and sat down by a tree and said, if you're not going to let me go, I'll just wait here. I'm not going, and I'm not paying. And he wanted to charge me a fine. It was some kind of ransom deal. So he turned his attention to some poor Gabonese woman and her baby, and he got a couple of francs out of them, and then he finally turned to me and said, go, and I got in the car and we left. Nevertheless, it was you got to watch out. They do that a lot down in Africa, holding you ransom. I'll probably do it all over the world, never mind. So I get to Libreville. It was nice. We spent a couple of days there. Then I wanted to go to Lamborghini. This is where Albert Schweitzer did all of his work. It's deep in the jungles. So we got in a taxi, or I think it was a pickup truck actually on this leg. And it was a long hours and hours drive to Lamborghini. And we arrived there, and you got to see Albert Schweitzer's house, his hospital. Here's a picture. Schweitzer, he won the, I think it was the 1955 Nobel Prize. This was back when Nobel Prizes meant something, before they gave it to Obama. Schweitzer, he was a theologian, organist, musicologist, writer, humanitarian, philosopher, physician. He did a lot of things, built hospital down there for the people. Just a good guy. And a theologian as well, very nice. And I spent a couple days there. I did not want to return to Libreville in that same taxi because it was a horrible ride. So I got on a boat and sailed down to Port Gentil, from which I flew back to Libreville and realized, I need to scratch off Sao Tome and Principe. So I flew out there for a couple of days of fun in the sun, back to Libreville. My return to Madrid was going to be out of Malabo, and to get back there, I had to fly through Douala, Cameroon, which was nice because I got to scratch off Cameroon. I say I've been there. And then back to Malabo and back to Madrid. Okay, so none of that has anything to do biblically, but while I was in Malabo on the first time, there was a garbage dump. And in that garbage dump, there was a little kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, bare feet, no shirt, and wearing like underoos, Superman underpants, and just tromping through the trash. And he had a cell phone. I didn't even have a cell phone in 2005. And the first thing I thought of was Revelation 11:9, that we are at a point where everyone on the planet will be able to witness those 2 dead bodies, those 2 witnesses lying in the streets of Jerusalem for 3.5 days, and we'll see them rise and be raptured back up into heaven. That it's still very, very vivid in my mind. What a cool thing to see way back then, and to realize, wow, the Bible is true. This could happen. All right, there's your Bible bonus, kind of. So, and let me tell you, we're going to have a part 2 on this, and in part 2, a lot more evidence pointing to Elijah and Moses. In fact, part 2's bonus, whew, it is massive, and it will, I think, decide this once and for all who the 2 witnesses are. Okay, there's your bonus. God bless. Bye-bye.